Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Juju Show, episode 12. This week, we're going to have some fun on what's been happening in the Juju community and highlight a cool toy I played with over the week that I want everyone to get involved with. I'm going to be recruiting in this here show this week. But first, introductions. I'm Ricarding with Juju Engineering. I will be your host today, and we will start from the end. Chuck, sir, how are we doing?
We're doing well. Hi, my name is Phil Butler. Work on the Kubernetes team.
Awesome. We've got you guys in the notes today. Happy new stuff. James, welcome back, community member. We need to get you like a title.
Extraordinaire.
I was thinking like community voice person thingy or whip cracker or something like that.
Yeah, bug pusher.
Bug pusher. Bug filer extraordinaire. I don't know. That's it could be good or bad. Alrighty, and we've got Kevin here from our big data folks. How goes the big data world, Kevin?
Hey, it's so good. I'm Kevin Monroe. I'm a big data folk.
So good. All right. Well, I can't wait to hear what's so good. Shall we start with some community news? I think we shall. Alrighty. First up, y'all may have noticed we had a new beta release of Juju 2.2. And so get your snap installs updating, or they actually should update themselves, honestly. But get the beta playing with. What's nice is you can install it with the snap and play with it alongside of something stable. Try out the beta and see how it's doing. There are a couple of interesting things I wanted to call out in here. One, I wanted to bravo to the conjure-up folks. They are move to using libjuju entirely throughout the conjure-up tool, which a side note tells me that libjuju is getting its love that it needs, and we've talked about it here on our previous episode. But if you're interacting and want Juju to do something it's not built to do yet, libjuju is a great way to automate and script and to play with, features and things that you need in it to script it out. So yay conjure-up and yay libjuju being more awesome than they were a little bit ago. Next up, and it's listed as conjure-up supports Oracle, and then underneath it, it notes out, we have an experimental Oracle compute provider. So Juju reaches out further into more clouds, all the places you might want to be, and the Oracle compute is definitely a place. So if you folks are in businesses or things that you have or are using the Oracle cloud, you can now leverage Juju to help get all those workloads that are in the Charm Store and put them to work. And try that out. We definitely appreciate feedback. It is experimental, so there's some instructions on some trying it out, and some notes about some things that are a little bit quirky. But now's the time to stretch it, try it, file the bugs on it, so we can get it into chip-top shape and make it a very well supported provider. Alrighty. So let's see, what is next? The next, software updates. This is like software update episode. Got Juju 2.2 beta 3, and there is a update heading out to the Charm Store. And what I love is it directly helps two different emails on the mailing list this week. One of which was about the search results and making it as hard to find community stuff. So what I would like to do would be to show these improvements. So let me share my browser. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Come back. Come back history. What I wanted to show here, you guys see my lovely query here. Now, notice this is on staging. It hasn't quite hit production yet. It'll be hitting production imminently. So hopefully by tomorrow, you'll see this on production as well. But notice it says staging.jujucharms.com, and it has a query for Postgres. I have searched for Postgres and found two promulgated lovely items that I can use. However, the new bit is I can see there are 17 other community results, and I can dive into those if I'm looking for Chuck's awesome Postgres or some demo stuff and some other things in here. So our hope is that this will help make finding things provided by the community a little bit easier, particularly when folks are working on charms that will actually help adding features or improving upon things that are promulgated currently, but it's still in development, still in testing, and not quite ready for prime time.
Round of applause for me for that one. That's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it seems, I think it's done a nice, good, tasteful thing with this. I mean, it's, we've kind of gone back and forth in this, where originally we had all the results out and we kind of sorted them at the top, but then it was confusing because on a page you'd see, you don't need to see 19 Postgres. I don't know which one to use. And on the other hand, though, when there is good stuff in there, making it possible to find is important. The other thing, and I'm trying to remember who emailed this other one. It may actually have been, no, it was Merlin, not Mr. Beatty here. But the question came up about using JaaS, and it was around, how do I remove credentials that I've added? And we said, well, I emailed and said, well, there's a secret page you can go to. If you go to this magic URL, then you will have awesomeness and be able to remove them. In staging, you can see you now have both a profile page, which is all of your charms and bundles and things, and an account page. And your account page is where you can add credentials to JaaS, you can list them and remove them. So again, once this hits production, if you're using JaaS, which everyone should be, it will be much easier to help manage your credentials within JaaS. And this is just part of the normal rolling improvements of our beta product that we've got there.
So I have a question about this, right? What happens if I have a model deployed and I delete the credentials from JaaS that were being used to power that model?
Bad things happen. The world ends. Don't do it. That's a good question, and I haven't tested it out because, like I said, it's in staging. I'm kind of curious. I believe what will happen is that because the credential is already in use and running, if you delete it, it will delete it from future use because it's kind of stored off on the side. But that existing model will continue to work and operate. And then if you tear down that model and try to recreate it with the credential, that will then fail.
Cool, that satisfies me, thanks.
I believe the future steps will be doing, there's some work that still needs to happen in Juju itself to be able to do things like swap what credentials are in use underneath of it. Because you could totally see at some point, I started something out under my personal account. Maybe now I want to move it to a work-based account or something, and how that would work. And so, but there's some trickery-foo that needs to take place for that one. So look for jujucharms.com updates with all kinds of awesome improvements, including those two that I wanted to highlight since people had directly asked about it on the mailing list. Next up, I'm going to toss this one. I see a lovely email about Kubernetes, the Canonical Distribution of Kubernetes 1.6.2 support. And I see an awesome release notes list of cool things that people get. What did I get, Chuck?
So 1.6.2 was primarily a bug fix release. As far as awesome things, you can expect things like kubelet not panicking whenever the Docker daemon's not running. There was some fixes regarding persistent volumes when they didn't have a class annotation. Some other stuff that's related to things that aren't necessarily targeted at us, but there was also some bug fix releases in the charms themselves. I don't have all of those notes pulled up in front of me, but I do have the release notes posted, and I'll make sure that we get those in the show notes.
I will have them there. Actually, they're already there in the show notes. And what was interesting on this one was at the same time, the DockerCon is recently going on, and someone was commenting on Twitter about the difficulty in keeping up with the releases. And what I really loved about your guys' release notes actually was the best part about how to keep up to date, how to upgrade, and that you guys are pushing not just here's how to bring up a Kubernetes to play with story, but here's how to keep it running and keep it up to date and move forward and the things to watch out for and all that. And that's the kind of stuff that I know users actually, they really appreciate. So it was kind of fun on Twitter to be like, hey, what you need is this thing over here. See this lovely document and these lovely tools to help you keep your Kubernetes up to date. You should be trying that out.
What was fun is we had a community member in channel while we were pressing the release. We were released no more than 15 minutes. He said, hey, I just upgraded to 1.6.2. That's kind of cool. How did that work? So if they did it and it was so automatic for them that they had to ask, how did that happen? It's like, hey.
Is that due to the snaps? Did the snaps auto update?
Exactly.
Oh, snaps. I'm becoming a snap fanboy a little bit. I do love that. And so if you're not aware, snaps are a lovely little packaging setup for shipping bits, for shipping software bits. And the Kubernetes that we ship out is snapped now. And I think that was part of the release, was that there was some additional snapping going on, correct?
That is correct. Now, we've been on Snap since our 1.6 GA release. This cut to 1.6.2, we just pushed up some new snaps. We added some operational fixes in the charms, and we've decoupled those two events. which means that your Kubernetes now is basically locked in a track. So 1.6 is a track that you will continue to receive automatic updates for, and it will not go between like major minor revisions. So whenever we cut 1.7, it won't automatically update to that. It will require a manual action. And the reason why we wanted to do that is to give operators a chance to receive the best of the latest and greatest security fixes and bug fix releases, but we don't want them to incur any potential downtime without having the ability to plan for that. So you can kind of set aside a half hour, an hour, whatever your maintenance window may be, change that config option. So it's just Juju config Kubernetes master channel equals 1.7/stable is what it will be when it's ready. And it will start to migrate your deployment over to 1.7. And this also incurs a manual action now on your part where you can Juju run Kubernetes worker upgrade. And that's going to make sure that we get all of the system components migrated to anything new that may be changing. For example, we're looking into supporting RBAC and federation, and part of that federation workload was changing out the DNS provider to core DNS. That's not something we're going to just automatically do. It'll take a manual action so that way you know what's happening in your cluster, and we'll give you a nice little report when it's done.
Very cool. It's almost like managing a large running scale-out software system. It's complicated, and that there are awesome tools out there to help make it manageable.
That's the idea. We want to take the friction out of operating this cluster over time.
Awesome. Well, that's some great work, and I wanted to highlight that because I think that is very cool and very awesome to see. And last, in community news this week, I'm glad Kevin's here because I was going to ask him. He had emailed a list about the great cleanup of some big data charms in the store, and I wanted to highlight that some of that stuff will be changing. And it looks like it hasn't happened yet, Kevin. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right. There's one. So we list some old HTTP Hortonworks based charms in the default search box. If you were to go to jujucharms.com and click in the search box but not type anything, you'll see some old HTTP things. So before un-promulgating those, which would have caused that to 404, wanted to make that there was a PR already approved and merged, and so on the next release, those older charms will be out of there, which will make them safe for un-promulgation, and we won't 404 anywhere on the site.
Gotcha. No, fair enough. And I know that the team's doing some work there to help make that more automatic because that's a pain. But cool. But just so folks are aware, the people write charms, they come and they do some work. They think they're stable enough, or it just doesn't keep up with changes over time. Not everyone, keeps things running on the edge, and therefore things might only work on older Ubuntu releases and not be updated for newer ones or whatnot. So the two things there to know. One is that kind of want everyone to kind of be aware this is just normal, keeping the store nice and clean and useful for all our new users that come along and try stuff out. But two, this is also an opportunity for folks that are involved or might care about a charm or something that's being unpromulgated because it's not being maintained to kind of step up and grab something that's there. It's started. You might be using it on some older, Ubuntu or whatnot, which means that the delta to kind of keep things up and maintain should be, much lighter than starting something from scratch and all. So encourage folks who find something that they really care about in there. Now's a great time to get involved, join the community, and to pick up some maintenance and to help get these things updated. And maybe you could save a charm from being unpromulgated. Or not. It may be just time for it to go. No one uses that anymore, right? Some new cool big data tool is all the rage.
That's right.
All righty. That's the news. Is there anything you guys wanted to highlight from the last 2 weeks here before I go and do my show and tell? And my recruiting of people? Excellent then.
Yeah, actually, I'll butt in. I had a great experience deploying the new big data charms that Kevin released last week. A few of my buddies who are working on big data projects were looking for a way. They were really frustrated get it with the tooling and getting all of the software to stand up, and they just really didn't have an idea of DevOps and the culture of the tooling or what existed. And when I showed them how they could deploy their Zeppelin and Hadoop Spark stacks with Juju, they were floored. And I think they've been having a really successful experience with it ever since. And I just wanted to say a big shout out to Kevin for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. As you know, we're big fans of Zeppelin here. I did a blog post and show about Zeppelin a couple weeks ago where I was playing with it for just normal database querying around and analytics stuff, which is a lot of fun. And it's so true. The whole big data kind of Apache stack of stuff is interesting because they've done a really good job with architecting things that pipe into each other, right? Like you build the thing you need by plugging in the pieces that you need. You need real-time streaming, you need distributed file databases, you need, whatever you need, there's a different module to kind of plug in for you. But then that makes bringing all that up repeatedly and sharing that and having consistency across a team really, really hard. Which is great when the charms and the relations that kind of support connecting and plugging different pieces in and having it all come up configured and talking to each other properly with the correct information exchange and everything is a real big win. It's one of those spaces that Juju really shines at. I always have to say that. It's one of those, if there ever was a niche, that one hit it pretty square on the head. All right, show and tell time. How many of you guys have heard of Jupyter Notebook? Also used to be known as IPython Notebook.
Oh, I know what that is.
Okay. Well, so there you go. You may know about it. It's changed names to Jupyter Notebook. I think they're trying to stretch that it's not just for Python anymore. And so I was looking through the list of charms that have been updated recently in the store. I don't know if you guys know about this or not, but there's this kind of cool URL you can go to in the charm store API, and I'll share it here. I don't know why. I'll put it in the show notes. But basically, you can go and get the list of all the changes about publishes items that were published. How would you say that? To the charm store, and you can do it based on how many items or a date range or whatnot. So I often poke at this when I'm looking around for something cool to play with and see what's new and what people are working on. So I know, BD, here, you've got a couple different WebIRC clients poking around. I feel like you're experimenting with WebIRC lately. You didn't know I was secretly spying on you with my publish log.
Yeah, I just needed to find a good, persistent WebIRC client that supported SASL. And a lot of them that I've found are really nice, but when you deploy them to AWS, and you're trying to run them from an IP restricted area, then Freenode would request that you use different security mechanisms in your authentication. And so the lounge was something that Adam Stokes pointed me in the direction of when I was looking at Shout IRC. And the lounge is a fork of Shout with a bunch of improvements, including SASL support. And so it was just Marco kind of had like a half charm going, and I kind of took those bits and just made something that really worked out well.
Awesome. So here I'm going to share my screen. Here you can see the API results of what comes back and changes. And I use a little Chrome extension called JSON View, which makes my JSON pretty print so I can read it and all that, which is kind of nice. So here we can see that the OpenStack charmers have been, and the big data charmers have been getting to work publishing some new revisions. And that's cool. But anyway, so looking at this, I ran across this charm, Jupyter Notebook. And what this thing is it's basically you build notebooks, and in a way people keep kind of comparing it to Zeppelin, and I push back, but it does have some similarities in that you have these different notebooks you can put together, and in these notebooks you can put text and code. And so here I have a running Jupyter notebook that I did from this charm, and so this charm looks like it's done. I kind of looked up this guy. That someone submitted it. It looks like the email address is to a professor out of a college in Italy, university in Italy, named Giuseppe. I'm going to guess that's how you say it. And I apologize for my American butchering of all things foreign, if that's not. But what you do is you kind of go through and you create these notebooks. And so you can go through, and I have, let's see, simple example. Let's look at this one. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. That's the Go one. Where is the normal one? Maybe I removed it. So the point is that it's built on Python, and it has what's called kernels. And so it comes with a Python kernel. And what you can do is you can blobs of text. You can do markdown support, and then you can write code and you can execute the code. So I can come up here and hit this little play button, and it'll execute the line of code and then jump to the next block. And I can kind of keep hitting play. And when I hit play, notice it flashed this, it runs the function month on the date and says that it is May. And if I hit it again, it says May 15th, because it's looking at what day is in the string May 15th. And the reason I think this is just so awesome is that I think there's a lot of places where people have documentation or tutorials, or especially in things like classrooms and such, where you can put together kind of a walk through this. But what's awesome is that this is just Python, Python code. So I can print, hello Juju world. And now if I rerun this, it will output what the little code block does. So it just says hello Juju world. And so you can kind of prep a lesson or a tutorial in here that's very interactive. Folks can go through and run stuff in here. And like I mentioned, it's got these different kernels. And so one of the things I did was to look at how to load the Go kernel. So someone's put together a kernel that will actually enable you to run Go code. And if we go into the kernel here, we can restart and clear the output. So my out will go away here. And now I can start going through and go, okay, now run that line, run that line, run that line. And then voila, it actually ran my Go code. And so here I could walk through how do channels work. And I can put together a little example where users can step by step go through and learn how channels would work in Go. Another one here where, again, it's got a code block, and this one does some sorting. And you can go through and restart, clear everything, and then just run all the code blocks on the page. And it'll go through and it'll run them all. And so I wanted to highlight this for a couple of reasons. One, because I thought it was just cool. And two, because I really want to try to, I think this would be a great way to do a Juju tutorial somehow with like libjuju or something, where basically we could take the examples directory in libjuju and put together a notebook that walks you through how to, do things, how to interact with Juju and talk to it. And I think that would be really kind of fun. But I put this here because I feel like this is a grow the community kind of thing, right? This is a very simple charm so far. All it does is it brings up the Python notebook or the Jupyter notebook software tool. It doesn't yet support the HTTP interface, so you'll notice that I'm on port 8888 in order to do anything here. It doesn't support loading of kernels externally. You have to manually SSH to the machine and set it up. And I really felt like, man, you know what? Juju has this lovely idea of subordinates. And it would be so awesome if I could drop a subordinate on this Jupyter network and actually put together, I want the Go one, I want the Node.js one. And it's just a whole world of kernels it supports. Let me show, shouldn't have stopped sharing. So there's a whole community out there of, one of these tabs, or not. There's a whole list of different kernels that are available. And what's cool is they've got a whole community around putting together different notebooks that can be used. Some of them go through and they load plotting libraries to do various scientific plotting and data analysis. So it's kind of interesting for big data world, for the tutorial world, for here you can see a book, Mining the Social Web has put together a notebook that walks you through the different examples from the book so that you can actually interact and play with them. And I think there's a lot Juju could offer this tool as far as being a much easier tool. To load this kernel for Go, I had to install Golang and some dev headers, and then I had to go get a couple of dependencies, and then I had to copy the built kernel into a certain directory that the Jupyter notebook wanted to have it in for the correct path, and that involved editing a JSON file and such. And you kind of sit there and go, man, if I could just load different kernels with different subordinates, if I could add new notebooks to this with just by a Juju action, Juju action, add new notebook and point it at these IPYNB files and just populate it. I could really script almost like a whole classroom setup. Or if I wanted to do let's say I wanted to do a charm school, right? I would be able to put together a notebook of basically, you know, reactive snippets that walk through and might actually do something useful and actually guide someone through a whole charm school and different chapters and stuff through various notebooks. So what I'd like to do is go, hey, it's a very basic charm, and there's a lot of folks that have experience that could find this useful. So I encourage you all to check out this charm and this charm author and to help out. It's located at, let me share my screen so I can show the URL, and then I'll put it in the show notes. It is this charm here. It's ATTARDI-H is the username. And it needs some love. By default, it listens on the localhost port, and I had to change it to listen on 0.0.0.0 to actually get it to kind of get up and running. After that, there's a lot of work that could be done for supporting HTTP relations, supporting other actions and things. There's just a lot that could go in and make this a really awesome, useful tool. So anyway, that's my spiel, my request to help this professor in Italy out, because I'm sure this has got to be something he's using for classes and stuff out there to help put together and educate the next, you know, realm of computer science students or something out there. What do you guys think? Have you played with this much?
Totally. I've spent a lot of time with Jupyter Notebook. It's an awesome tool. There's one that hooks into Spark as well, isn't there, in the charm store? There
is, and that was I originally tried to do that. Unfortunately, the thing is that it's a subordinate and it only works on top of Spark. Gotcha. So I think having just a generic standalone Jupyter Notebook charm is very interesting, and that's why this was a brand new charm that someone had done, and may even have pulled some parts from the subordinate into it to get kind of kicked off and going. But I encourage folks to try it out and submit some updates to it, and let's build a community around this Jupyter Notebook, because I think we could use it at a lot of conferences and stuff, and everyone can benefit. You know, crowdsource that operations, as we like to say in Juju.
Yeah.
Gotta love open source. Come on. All right. Well, that's all I've got to show today. Anything else you guys want to cover today? Going once, going twice?
That's it for me.
All righty then.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome, Kevin. All right. Everyone have a good day. We'll see you in 2 weeks for the next Juju Show.
Take care.